It bears an image on it, ventral, front, and back dorsal, of a human figure.
It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man. And the crucified man calls us to remember Jesus' death and resurrection.
The Shroud of Turin remains one of the most examined, debated, and controversial relics in all of human history. For centuries, millions of believers have viewed this ancient linen cloth as tangible evidence connected to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, many scientists, skeptics, and historians have argued that it's nothing more than a medieval creation, or perhaps an incredibly skilled forgery. And throughout the ages, the mystery has endured, untouched, and unresolved. But now, everything has changed. Recently, advanced artificial intelligence, designed specifically for medical imaging, historical research, and forensic reconstruction, was used to analyze the Shroud of Turin in a way that has never been possible before. The findings shocked researchers around the world. This wasn't just a simple image enhancement. The AI uncovered depth. It revealed incredible precision. That discovery has pushed physicists into unfamiliar territory, forcing them to ask a question once thought impossible. Could the world's most famous religious relic be preserving evidence of an event so extreme, so energetic, that modern physics has no framework to fully explain it yet? This wasn't artwork. It was information. For decades, the story seemed settled. This 14-foot-long cloth was dismissed as a medieval fake, a clever forgery, painted to deceive the faithful. But there's a problem with that explanation. When AI examined the tangled fibers of the linen, it stopped. It found a signal. Beneath the faint, haunting image of the man on the cloth, the system detected a repeating mathematical symmetry, an ordered pattern hidden inside the chaos. This isn't something a medieval artist could have produced. In fact, no known natural process can fully account for it. In simple terms, the AI uncovered what looks like a digital echo trapped within the threads. And to understand why this changes everything, you have to look closer. The image on the shroud isn't painted into the fabric. It's shockingly shallow, resting only on the outermost microfibers of the linen. We're talking about a depth measured in just a few hundred nanometers. To put that into perspective, a single human hair is about 80,000 nanometers thick. The image on this cloth is far thinner even than a soap bubble. The color doesn't soak into the fabric the way paint, dye, or ink would. If you cut a linen thread and look at it from the side, the core remains white. The image exists only on the surface, resting on top like a faint scorch mark. There are no brush strokes, no visible direction or motion. Instead, it appears as if the fibers themselves were chemically altered by a sudden, intense burst of energy. When AI examined this, it didn't interpret it as artwork. It treated it as data. The neural networks applied a method called principal component analysis, a way of stripping away visual noise to reveal what truly matters. What emerged wasn't an image in the artistic sense, but a structured field of information. The light and dark areas follow a precise, predictable rule, almost like a physical law tied to distance. Picture a cloth draped over a body. If you were painting that scene, you'd rely on shading to create depth and illusion. But the shroud doesn't use shading at all. Instead, the AI confirmed something far stranger. The intensity of the image perfectly matches the distance between the cloth and the body beneath it. Where the cloth was closest to the skin, the image is darkest. Where it was farther away, the image fades lighter. It forms a flawless mathematical map of a human form. And it gets even more unsettling. The AI also detected faint, repeating symmetries and ratios across the entire body. Think of it like musical harmony, but translated into visual form. The spacing of the eyes, the proportions of the hands, the curve of the ribs, all of it follows an underlying geometric framework. These patterns were invisible to human observers for centuries, hidden within the visual noise of the fabric's weave. But the AI recognized them instantly, and that leads to a troubling conclusion. This image doesn't behave like something created by a human hand pressing pigment onto cloth. A medieval forger would have needed to be a master physicist, mathematician, and nanotechnologist all at once. They wouldn't have been painting an image. They would have been painting with invisible geometry. In simple terms, the AI showed that this image behaves far less like a drawing and far more like a projection. That realization has forced scientists to confront a disturbing possibility. The world's most famous religious relic may actually function like an advanced form of information technology, created by a process we still can't explain. The AI didn't settle the debate over the shroud's age. It made the argument almost irrelevant. Because even if the cloth truly dates to the Middle Ages, one question remains unanswered. How could three-dimensional data be encoded into linen fibers? It would be like discovering a QR code hidden inside a 15th century painting. By every rule we know, it simply shouldn't exist. The AI revealed that the shroud isn't just an image. It's a document, one that contains verifiable data we're only now beginning to understand, thanks to modern technology. But the mystery goes even deeper. The system also examined the areas surrounding the body. In a typical forgery, the background is either blank or deliberately filled in. On the shroud, the AI found something entirely different: informational silence. In other words, the image-forming process was selective. Whatever created the image affected only the areas where the body was present, and it did so with extreme precision. The energy involved was highly collimated, meaning it traveled in perfectly parallel lines. Today, we can only achieve that level of control using lasers. Think about shining a flashlight on a wall. The light spreads out, the edges blur, but the image on the shroud doesn't blur at all. At a microscopic level, it's razor sharp. That means the energy responsible for the image didn't fan out as light normally does. It moved in straight, disciplined paths, apparently ignoring the inverse square law of physics. The AI flagged this behavior as a physical anomaly. What we're left with is a piece of cloth that seems to have recorded a moment when the usual rules of physics didn't fully apply. The machine didn't just uncover a pattern. It uncovered a map pointing towards something far more unsettling, something that challenges our understanding of energy, matter, and the laws of thermodynamics themselves. The map hidden in the burn marks. So here's why this AI discovery has scientists genuinely shaken. And to understand it, we need to rewind to the technology that uncovered the mystery long before artificial intelligence ever entered the picture. The shroud has always carried details that refuse to make sense. Let's go back to 1898. A lawyer named Secondo Pia takes the very first photograph of the cloth. Alone in his darkroom, he develops the glass plate. As the image appears, he nearly drops it. On the photographic negative, the faint, ghostly figure on the linen suddenly transforms into a sharp, lifelike portrait. What was barely visible on the cloth becomes clear and detailed. The shocking truth? The image on the shroud behaves like a photographic negative, created centuries before photography even existed. That detail alone should stop anyone in their tracks. How do you paint a negative when the idea of a negative hasn't been invented yet? A medieval artist paints what they see. They don't reverse light and shadow so that a camera 500 years in the future can reveal the real image. That would be like writing software code in the year 1300. But that was only the beginning. Fast forward to the 1970s. A group of scientists from the US Air Force Academy decided to run an image of the shroud through a VP8 image analyzer. This wasn't experimental equipment. It was NASA-grade technology used to map the surface of the Moon and Mars by converting brightness into elevation. Feed a normal photograph, no matter how high quality, into a VP8 and the result is chaos. Faces collapse inward. Eyes bulge unnaturally. Features warp and distort. That's because photographs depend on light sources, which create shadows unrelated to physical depth. A shadow under a nose appears darker, and the machine interprets that darkness as a deep cavity. But when the shroud image was processed, something impossible happened. It didn't distort. Instead, the VP8 produced a clean, undistorted three-dimensional relief of a human body. The scientists were stunned. The image contained accurate spatial information. Darker regions aligned with areas where the cloth was closer to the body. Lighter regions matched areas farther away. This is the contradiction that has haunted researchers for decades. A cloth that may date to the Middle Ages, but one that carries what looks like advanced three-dimensional encoding. And this is where AI re-enters the story. The artificial intelligence didn't just confirm the VP8 findings, it sharpened them. Neural networks filtered out the visual noise caused by the fabric's weave and even removed damage from the fire of 1532. What remained was something even harder to explain. Not just an image, but a precise map, hidden in the scars of time itself. What remained after the analysis was something extraordinary, a topographic map of a human body that is anatomically flawless. The unsettling part is what the data suggests next. The body appears to pass through the cloth. Let me explain. The image aligns with a concept known as volumetric projection. It's as if the body became luminous for a fraction of a second, releasing energy that traveled straight through the linen. That burst left behind a surface-level mark that recorded distance, not contact. The AI found that this marking is perfectly uniform. It doesn't soak into the threads or burn through them. It rests only on the outermost fibers. If an artist had painted it, pigment would have penetrated the cloth. If a forger had used a heated statue or bas-relief, the heat would have scorched deeper and spread sideways. But this image doesn't behave that way. It is sharp, vertical, and incredibly high resolution. According to the AI, whatever formed it acted in straight, disciplined lines, as if gravity and diffusion simply didn't apply. Then the system uncovered another detail, long considered controversial. You may have heard the theory that faint impressions of Roman coins were placed over the eyes. For years, scholars argued over it. The AI enhanced the contrast around the eye sockets and detected subtle circular distortions that matched the size and shape of Roman lepton coins, specifically those minted under Pontius Pilate. If that finding holds, it dates the cloth to roughly 29 to 36 AD. A medieval forger wouldn't know to use rare first-century coins, nor could they paint them so faintly that they remain invisible without modern digital enhancement. And then there's the blood. The AI confirmed it isn't paint or pigment, it's real human blood, type AB. But the condition of the blood is what's truly strange. Spectral analysis shows it has retained a reddish hue. Normally, ancient blood darkens to brown or black as it oxidizes over time. The fact that it remains red suggests unusually high levels of bilirubin, a chemical produced when the body undergoes extreme physical trauma and torture. Even more revealing, the AI detected that the blood was on the cloth before the image formed. Beneath the bloodstains, there is no image at all. The blood soaked into the fabric first, and only afterward did the imaging event occur. If this were a painting, the artist would have had to apply real blood first, then somehow create a negative image around it without ever overlapping the stains. That level of precision isn't just unlikely, it's physically impossible for a human hand. The AI has effectively dismantled the painting theory. The data simply doesn't support it. What we're seeing is a cloth that behaves less like artwork and more like photographic film, exposed to a form of radiation rarely encountered in nature. The implications are enormous. If this image is a recording, then a real physical event occurred, something that released an extraordinary amount of energy from the body itself. The AI isn't guessing. It's detecting the residual signature of that energy. And just when the timeline seemed settled, everything began to unravel. The cloth had been hiding a critical flaw, one small patch that misled the world and quietly rewrote the textbooks. For most people, the story supposedly ended in 1988. That was the year science appeared to close the case. 3 independent laboratories, Oxford, Zurich, and the University of Arizona performed radiocarbon dating on samples taken from the shroud. Using accelerator mass spectrometry, a technique that counts individual carbon-14 atoms, they produced a date range of 1260 to 1390 AD. The method was precise. The headlines were decisive: fake, medieval, case closed. But almost immediately, the story began to fall apart. The problem wasn't the technology, it was the sample. To minimize damage, researchers cut a small piece from a single corner of the cloth. On paper, it made sense. In reality, it was a disaster. For centuries, the shroud had been displayed by holding up its corners. Thousands of hands had touched them. Those areas absorbed smoke from candles, oils from skin, sweat from crowds. And that wasn't even the worst of it. In 1532, the shroud survived a devastating fire, one that scorched parts of the fabric and exposed it to intense heat, smoke, and contamination. That single corner had lived a very different history than the rest of the cloth, and it may have fooled the entire world. After the fire, a group of nuns repaired the damaged areas and stitched the shroud onto a new backing cloth. They used a technique known as invisible reweaving, so precise that, to the naked eye, the new threads are indistinguishable from the original ones. One of the original researchers, chemist Raymond Rogers, later decided to re-examine the leftover fibers from the 1988 carbon dating sample. What he saw under the microscope was astonishing. The fibers taken from that corner were chemically different from the rest of the shroud. Those sample threads were coated with a plant-based gum and mixed with cotton. But the main body of the shroud is pure linen. There is no cotton anywhere in it. Rogers also detected traces of dye, used to blend the newer threads with the older fabric. His conclusion was explosive. The laboratories hadn't dated the shroud itself. They had dated a medieval repair. It's like trying to determine the age of the Great Pyramid by testing a coffee cup a tourist left on the steps. Of course, the result would be modern. That realization threw the entire 1988 conclusion into serious doubt. More recently, newer technology has stepped in to answer the question more accurately. Scientists used wide-angle X-ray scattering to examine how the flax cellulose in the linen has degraded over time. Unlike carbon-14 dating, this method isn't affected by dirt, smoke, or added threads. It looks directly at atomic level breakdown. The results were startling. The degree of decay in the shroud's linen closely matches fabrics found at Masada in Israel, dated between 55 and 74 AD. Another independent study using vibrational spectroscopy reached the same conclusion. The cloth is approximately 2,000 years old, so here's where things stand. On one side, there's a disputed carbon-14 test taken from a contaminated repair area that suggests a medieval date. On the other, there are multiple advanced analyses pointing firmly to the 1st century. And then the AI added another layer. It cross-referenced the shroud with another ancient relic, the Sudarium of Oviedo. This smaller cloth, preserved in Spain, is believed to have covered the face of Jesus immediately after death, before the body was wrapped in the shroud. The Sudarium has a documented history going back to the 7th century, long before the supposed medieval forgery window. When the AI compared the bloodstains on the Sudarium with those on the shroud, the result was striking. They matched perfectly. The blood type was the same. When the Sudarium is placed over the shroud's face, the bloodstains align perfectly, shape, angle, and flow. That means both cloths covered the same face at the same time. And here's the problem. The Sudarium is older than the Middle Ages, which means the shroud must be too. Clinging to a medieval date only creates a bigger contradiction. A forger would have had to create a nanoscale image with embedded 3D data, matching the atomic aging of ancient linen and perfectly aligning with a separate cloth preserved in Spain. That's not just unlikely, it's absurd. The AI ignored carbon dating politics and went straight to physics. And the physics are clear. This isn't a painting, It isn't a rubbing. It isn't a scorch mark. It behaves like evidence. Scientists are now treating the shroud as a forensic scene, not a religious icon. Whatever formed the image wasn't paint, chemicals, heat, or contact. Something turned that body into a sudden burst of light. So what's left? How do you create a razor-thin, three-dimensional negative image on linen without destroying the cloth? That's where the science turns unsettling. The leading explanation points to vacuum ultraviolet radiation. Experiments at Italy's ENEA labs showed that short-wavelength UV light can color only the top 200 nanometers of linen, exactly like the shroud, without scorching it. But to imprint a full human image would require an unimaginable burst of energy, about 34 trillion watts, delivered in less than a billionth of a second. Any longer, the cloth would vaporize. Any weaker, nothing would appear. And that leads to the disturbing possibility the AI highlights. The body didn't decay. It disappeared. The image is orthographic, meaning the energy traveled in perfectly straight lines through the cloth, controlled, vertical, and unaffected by gravity. Some theories suggest a mass-to-energy transformation. Others point to an extreme electrical discharge, leaving lightning-like fractal patterns. The most radical idea proposes a higher dimensional event, like a body passing out of our reality and leaving a shadow behind. What makes this harder to dismiss is what's missing. There's no sign of decomposition. The bloodstains are pristine. The fibers aren't disturbed. The body didn't move. It vanished from inside the cloth. So, here's the dilemma. If it's a medieval fake, the forger had technology beyond modern science. And if it isn't? Then what remains may be the physical trace of an event we don't yet understand. The AI didn't find paint. It didn't find brushstrokes. It found the signature of a flash, 1 moment long, yet preserved for 2,000 years. So what do you think? A supernatural event, the greatest hoax ever created, or physics we haven't discovered yet? Let me know in the comments, and follow for more mysteries that refuse to stay buried.